Welcome to I Feel Like.
Your ultimate guide to navigating life as a young adult.
We're your hosts,
Anna,
Dan,
and Evan.
And we're here to share our experiences and provide advice on everything from surviving college and forming relationships,
the situational etiquette, and maintaining a social life.
I feel like it's time to start the podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. In part 1 and 2 of our internship series, we talked about finding, applying, and interviewing for internships. If you haven't listened to those episodes, you should definitely check them out if you're actively looking for an internship. Now that you know all the tips and tricks from part 2, hopefully you've accepted an internship position. We know that it can be really intimidating to enter the corporate world and be a new employee. So in this episode, we wanted to provide some advice to help you acclimate to the workplace and make a good first impression.
Yeah, so I guess just to give everyone some background on the experiences that we've had and where we're coming from. We already talked about this a little bit in our last couple episodes, but just a refresher if you haven't checked those out. So for me, I've had, at this point I've had 3 internships. I'm about to start a 4th one. 3 of them were in person, and one of them, this upcoming one, is remote.
I guess I'll go next. I have at this point pretty much completed 2 co-ops, actually. We went over this in some of the earlier episodes in this series. We all go to a co-op school, so it's a little different than a traditional internship, but it's the same principle. But I've done 1 in person and then 1 online.
And I've done 1 online internship.
Yeah, so I think regardless of if you're in person, if you're online, whatever, I think the first main thing, if it's at not even an established company, really just any professional company, the first thing that you have to do really before you even get in the door or log into your computer is the whole onboarding process. Now, onboarding is a little bit different. I'm sure every company probably does it a little bit different, but I think that there are just some general tips, tricks, and some advice that kind of correlates with this onboarding process that I think would be helpful for really anyone to know if you've secured an internship.
Right. I mean, the onboarding process, it's really hard to generalize, but I guess probably what's going to happen is if you're online or if you're in person, they'll give you some equipment like a company computer. I don't know, maybe like a docking station, a mouse, just kind of stuff like that. When mine was online, they sent me a box with a computer and a keyboard and a charger and stuff, and it was pretty much set up for me with most of the programs I needed. But yeah, that's what is going to happen in terms of equipment probably. And then when I had my in-person co-op, they brought us in the first day, and there were a bunch of new hires and interns. So they kind of just stuck us in a room together and went over a presentation and handed out computers. And I don't know, I guess we had to sign some papers and show our social security cards and passports and identification.
Yeah, a huge part of onboarding is making sure you're filling out all of those documents that might not even have to do with the company, but just tax documents like your W-2s, I think your I-9s. I do not know these pronouns really whatsoever, but you do usually have to fill out a lot of these forms and stuff like that. So I think just to start right off the bat, a huge piece of advice would be in the beginning while you're still in this onboarding process before you've really started working at a company is making sure that you're staying organized and keeping track of all the stuff that the company sends you, because you want to make sure that you're making a good impression for the company, that you're responding to any of the questions that they have, things like that, but also that if you're getting paid, that you're going to be able to get paid for your work and that you're going to be able to file your taxes properly, things like that. So I think I definitely just say stay organized during that onboarding process and keep track of all that.
Yeah, this isn't really a big tip, but just make sure that you're being honest. If they say, "Oh, did you get the keyboard?" and you say, "Oh, yeah," but you didn't actually get the keyboard because you're just trying to be polite. That's later you're gonna have to return the keyboard. So
Has that happened to you?
no, that hasn't happened to me. I'm just saying, make sure you actually get your equipment. Also, for online, I would say save your boxes and stuff, so that you don't have to buy your own boxes in the future to send the stuff back. Just keep whatever they send it in. You can send it back in that same thing. Just little things, staying organized and keeping track of what they have sent you.
Also, kind of going with that, don't be afraid to like reach out and like double check things like that. Like I've definitely had instances, especially with this upcoming co-op that I'm about to do, where they said they would be sending me like links to fill out certain stuff by certain dates and they just didn't send it, stuff like that. So I've definitely had to kind of follow up and like circle back to make sure that I did get this stuff. So don't be afraid to like reach out, like take the initiative, make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to have a successful onboarding.
Also, I know, I'm sure it depends on the company, but a lot of times if you need like another monitor or if your chair's not very good or something like that, there's resources you can do to get better equipment that works. If there's something wrong, it's definitely better to iron that out in the beginning rather than halfway through, when people are going to be nicer and giving you all these resources anyway. So just try and iron that out all in the beginning.
I think another thing to mention before we kind of get too in depth in this video is to kind of, I guess, be flexible and keep an open mind. It's a learning experience, and I think sometimes things aren't necessarily what we thought they would be. So your internship or co-op or whatever it is might not go exactly as you planned, or there might be unforeseen issues that you or your employer hadn't anticipated. So staying flexible and just remembering that it's kind of a learning experience for everyone will help you get in a good mindset that won't like stress you out or make you feel like your internship's a waste of time, because even if it's not what you thought it was, it's probably still a good experience, even if it's not the experience you thought you were going to have.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
matter
there's
what.
something to gain from really every professional experience that you do.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
And trust me, in the beginning, there will be lots of kinks to work out, lots of like things that come up that should have been addressed but weren't. So it's just, I know it's annoying, but you just kind of have to be patient and wait it out, and it will get fixed eventually.
So after onboarding, I guess if we're just kind of following this chronological timeline, does it make sense to at least for a little bit talk about just like first days, what you should do, things to bring, things like that?
Sure. I guess again with the onboarding, this is going to be super dependent on company position, I guess even the industry it's in, but I guess to give a really, really brief overview or things that you could expect. If it's in person, make sure you know how to get there, be on time. You don't want to be late for your first day. And like I said earlier, if it's in person, you'll probably um, maybe get sort of like a group presentation or something, especially if the summer internship and they have a couple interns, they'll probably set up some sort of like onboard meeting for you. But even for my online one, the first day I just log on to my computer and I had like an hour-long meeting with my manager just to kind of set some like basic things to do. So I don't know. I guess that's probably the first thing that would happen.
Um, in the beginning, you're definitely going to be sitting in on things that you maybe don't even know. Like, I know it was my first day and I was included in as much as they, as like if they were like, "Oh, would you want to sit in?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I was definitely sitting in on things in the beginning that I definitely didn't know anything about, but just, go to things, stay open minded, take notes. On the first day, definitely start a document where you're going to write stuff down, just some general stuff like, acronyms or names or like names of coworkers, even. You're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about this person in this other team that I'm never going to get to meet. And I just need to remember what the heck they do. Little things like that, just starting that and going to meetings and being open minded, even if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think with that, maybe even more generally, especially if you're in person, online, this doesn't really apply. But on your first day, definitely bring like some paper, maybe a notebook, something to write with. Because at one of my or my co-op actually. On my first day, it was kind of embarrassing because I didn't have that. And then she's like, oh, or my boss was like, oh yes, we're gonna go to this meeting. And then can you just like take notes on what this person says? And I'm like, oh, I don't have any paper or a pen. Can I borrow one? So just to avoid that situation, I definitely recommend bringing at least some basic supplies in the beginning, maybe even your laptop, because you never know how like work computers are gonna work, things like that.
I just wanted to add a quick note about the bringing your laptop thing. That's going to depend on the company. Some companies don't want personal computers at the place, especially on their network, on their Wi-Fi. So just note, if you're a tech company, that might not be it, but other companies, sure, that might be fine.
Yeah, or even any company that's probably like decently established, they're gonna have their own equipment that they're gonna give you. But I don't know, maybe if you're really that concerned, clear that up with HR, a manager, any point of contact,
Yes,
just so
always reach
you
out.
don't like you're not lugging around your whole desktop setup to your job. Also, another thing that happened on my in-person co-op, my entire like first week, my manager had just set up meetings with me and coworkers, other people from other teams that we worked closely with. So that was something again to keep me busy, start to feel a little bit more at home, if you will. I hate to use those kind of phrases, but it's nice to kind of see some familiar faces and get to know people and get an idea of what the different groups do, what the company does. But as Evan was saying, in the beginning, you are going to be lost. You're not going to know what's going on. So it's really just an opportunity to kind of absorb everything, read as much as you can about projects, the company, the team, and just try to absorb as much as you can in those early stages. It probably will take you a couple weeks, if not like a month or two, to actually feel like you know what's going on. I mean, that's pretty normal. At least I think it is.
I definitely think that's normal. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a bummer to have to show up to work and do a lot of independent stuff in the beginning sometimes. I'm sure it depends on what you're actually doing, but like for me, I was reading a lot of documentation on some existing, software, and you're not always going to be doing stuff in the beginning. Sometimes you are just playing catch up. And I also wanted to add that Anna talked about how her supervisor was setting up meetings for her and that was, keeping her busy. But I would definitely say that if no one's setting up those meetings for you, then you should set them up. Reach out to your supervisor and have a one-on-one with her and get to know her and other teammates and be like, "Oh, is there anyone else I should talk to?" Just give me their email. I'll reach out. No biggie. So definitely, if no one's setting those meetings up for you, reach out, take that initiative.
Yeah, if no one's really kind of making the initiative to talk to you, definitely reach out to coworkers in the beginning, especially if they're on your team. So A, they can get to know you, but then B, if you are kind of doing some independent work, like what Evan was saying, if you're looking up documentation or you're kind of just unsure of what to do in whatever position you're in, your coworkers are a great resource because chances are they've probably done some of the same work before, at least a little bit. So they can probably help you if you're struggling with anything.
To Evan's point, in the beginning for both of my co-ops, the first month was just like training on top of training. I had to do like read all these documents, take these little quizzes and do all these modules. Some of it like wasn't even relevant to the job that much. I guess it was just, I don't know, like stuff that the company made everyone do. But I hate to break it to you, but your first month is probably going to be boring. There's a lot of training and stuff that the company makes you do before you can start on stuff. So it might not be everything you thought it would in the beginning, but it does get better. And
It gets better.
I don't know, that might not sound super convincing, but once the training and the boring stuff is out of the way, it gets better. I promise.
In the beginning, it's tough because they're not always coming to you with problems. It's you coming to people, and that can definitely, be nervous and not be nervous, nerve wracking, and don't always want to reach out. But eventually, you will find your spot in a team, and you'll be like included in so much more, and you will have, I don't want to say a purpose, like but basically, like you'll have more of a purpose, I guess.
I also want to put it out there. I don't want to say like manage your expectations because every internship or co-op or opportunity is different. And I guess it depends on what the position entails, size of the company, your experience, stuff like that. But it is a lot of sitting in on meetings and watching and listening and learning. It's not always hands-on. They're going to make me the project lead. I'm going to make some revolutionary change that's going to increase this company's revenue by $1 million or something like that. I mean, it is a lot of observation, and sure, they do try to include you here and there, and they might give you some smaller tasks or let you help out on a project, but you're not gonna come in for like 3 or even 6 months and like run the department.
Well, like I guess the advice me and Anna are giving is definitely more for bigger companies, just because that's where we were. But if you were like
At a
specific,
startup or
yeah,
something.
like at a startup, like maybe the job description was like, oh, we need this product. We don't have IT right now. You're gonna be doing this. Like, this is all you. You're gonna have to figure this out on your own. Like, maybe that is you, and this is a different story. You're gonna be playing catch up for yourself, I guess, not for anyone else. But yeah, that's definitely specific to us, I guess.
I mean, I think those startups and really small companies, I think a lot of times they can't, they're probably unpaid because they don't have the budget to pay you. But I've heard that you can get really, really great experience just because they're probably like understaffed compared to a
Hmm.
huge company with several departments. So I don't know. I've never worked in a smaller environment like that, but I feel like I've heard through the grapevine that you can get really good experiences with those and
And I feel
do more work than you might at a bigger company,
And I feel like with
but you don't
those,
get
you're
paid.
walking away with a story that like you kind of crafted for yourself. So when, next interviews come, you'll be able to talk about this specific project that you ran and like you controlled the narrative for, you know what I mean? Like they won't be able to go to someone else and ask about this. Like you're the point person. So you can definitely make your own experience there.
But you can
Yeah.
still have a good experience at a big
Yes,
company.
yes,
Sorry to
absolutely.
cut you off, Dan, but we don't want to like deter you from getting like
Oh yeah.
a job at a
I don't
Fortune 50 company or anything like
I
that.
mean, I don't know enough. I haven't interned enough to be like, oh, definitely go to a startup or definitely go to a big company. Like they both definitely have their perks and amenities and different things there. And I don't think we're advocating for one. I think we're just saying there's many different experiences out there that you can have.
Yeah, like I've never really co-opted or interned at a big company. I guess like you guys, I think you guys have solely done big ones. I think for the most, or for all three of mine, they've really all been at small ones. But I definitely think that what you're saying about smaller companies is right. You definitely get a lot more responsibility, a lot more leeway. You're making a lot of decisions. At my second internship, yeah, my second one, within 4 months there, I'd already been published. So it's like you do get a lot more responsibility.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. It was unpaid, which is kind of a bummer in the moment, but that was definitely a good experience. And like Evan was saying, you can definitely use those experiences if you then want to go to a bigger company, which will probably be paid. So if you are kind of debating if you want to get maybe a paid or an unpaid internship or co-op, things like that, I definitely, I'm not going to say go to the smaller company first because obviously the bigger companies are also great. I'm doing a co-op at a bigger company next anyway, and I'm looking forward to that. But I think that by doing a small one first, it can maybe help you get a bigger one next time, if that makes sense.
I would say that if the only option you have is a small company and you're like, I don't want to, I would say, no, absolutely do it. It's still going to be beneficial. You can still get a lot out of it. So don't be casting it out just because it's a small company. Another thing I wanted to add was Anna was talking about setting up meetings with your manager and stuff in the beginning, but I think you should be meeting with your manager at least like once a month, probably. You know what I mean? Catching up.
Once a month.
Yes,
I
I
at my
think
that's
once a
first
what I've
week.
co-op,
heard.
at my first co-op, I met with my we had a scheduled one-on-one, me and my manager, once a week for like an hour. We didn't always use the hour, but that's what was the scheduled time. And for my second co-op that was online, probably for like the first maybe even like 2 or 3 months, we met like every single day. I mean, it was only maybe like 20 minutes in the afternoon, just like a little touch base meeting. And then we bumped it down to twice a week for maybe like 20 minutes each time. Again, we didn't always use the time, but it was just there. I think,
Just to
yeah, you need to at
clarify,
least. once
I
a
said at
week.
least once a month, just for the
I
record.
think it should be at least
I
once a
think that's
week.
misdeceiving the way you phrased it.
I did not meet with my manager often, and I think I did miss out. But at the same time, every day, like Anna, I don't think you need that.
But even in the beginning, if you're not talking to them very often, how do you know? Like, didn't you have questions to ask, or didn't you need any
Okay,
sort of
okay. Let me
guidance?
put it this way then, I guess. This is purely dependent on your role. I had other coworkers, and the manager just wasn't labeled as the first person to go to all the time. That's not what the manager was for. We had like, you know, leads on this and other people like here and, a ticket system. So you could always go to someone else on this other ticket. The manager just wasn't the person to go to first for me, but I think that's what I took away from it, being that I would have liked some input from the manager on like my progress and how they think I'm doing and how they see me from a manager perspective. But in terms of like working on things, I didn't really need my manager like that.
I think that Evan too, you kind of had a cool thing going on with like I guess like your supervisor hierarchy tree, things like that. Because I don't think you really explained it too much, but you had kind of a mentor for your co-op internship thing, and I think that that's kind of a good thing because I remember you talking about how like whenever you had a question, you would always go to her. So I
Yeah,
think like that kind of takes the place of a supervisor or manager for
sure.
Anna or I.
But I never met with my mentor for like an hour each day to talk about things. But that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
neither did I. I
I'm
said
just okay.
25 minutes.
I think we're all on the same page. Just set up a meeting at least once a week, then I guess, with whoever is watching over you.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably well, at least in my experience, my direct supervisor was usually not the manager or the director of the group I was in. So it was kind of like I don't want to say like a lower level employee, but it wasn't, my manager wasn't the manager of the team. So I think by having someone who is not like at the top of the hierarchy is better because they probably have more time to devote to you. Then maybe you're thinking like you're man of your group who oversees everyone, and we're talking maybe more about like a direct supervisor. So maybe that's why you didn't see yours, because the director of my group, like I never met with them just because I was reporting to a supervisor who reported to the director or the manager of the group.
Yeah,
I,
mine was the same way. I reported to like I don't want to say a coworker, but it was someone who was slightly higher than me, but it wasn't like the director of our team.
mm, Maybe this is different for the computer science world, but no, we had like manager, workers, and like business representatives and like a tech lead who's just supposed to know about the product. But the manager there wasn't really supposed to be levels there. But that's just me. What I was gonna say was um w- when you're reaching out to your manager and other coworkers, it's definitely important to get kind of a style down and like how you're going to reach out to them and how you're going to set up meetings and um, not just etiquette, but just how the company kind of works. Like, are they using a messaging system like just like Microsoft? Uh,
Teams, Microsoft
yeah,
Teams.
right. That's the messenger, but that's also the meeting software. But so just figuring little things out like that and following suit is important.
I think even like on top of like kind of things like that, I think even more basic things. Like at one of my co-ops, it was just kind of a standard within the company that everyone put their preferred pronouns in their email
Yeah.
signature bio.
Hmm.
So just kind of like small things like that, being able to like pick up on like company culture, seeing how just like casual things like that are done, just kind of adapting as you go.
I wanted to say that you should I'm cutting Anna off. I wanted to say that you should organize your email in the beginning. I know for me, I would get at hundreds of emails a day. I don't know about other people, but it was a lot. So setting like automated inboxes for like emails from this person will
I've
go to
never
this
heard of
inbox.
that. How do you do that? Like I literally did not know
Because
that was an
okay,
option. All
because
I
for
know is like flag, delete, uh high importance. I don't know.
okay, well, I don't. How many emails were you getting a day?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I was getting hundreds, but probably like upwards of like 20, 25 a day. I don't know.
Okay, well, let me say that it's not like I had to respond to all 100. Like, I was just kind of included in that. And you don't
Right.
want
Or
to,
just those stupid kind of like updates from the company or
yes,
like, here's our
exactly.
newsletter
Yes.
or
And you
stuff
don't want to
like
miss
that.
anything. Like, you don't want to just shuffle everything into one inbox and never read it. But just when I set up those automated things, it just made it easier. So it could be like, oh, the daily emails about this update are over here and I can just read them. But if something was important, then, it would go to my main inbox and then I would notice it and I'd read it and little things like that, I think, just to help you get organized.
I think for the next episode, you should teach a class on how to organize your email because I didn't know that that was a feature. But I guess I'm not a computer science student either.
I
So
don't
I
think you
don't
have
know.
to
It
be a
seems a little
computer science
advanced.
student to figure out little things like that. People are always saying that to me, but that's off topic.
I don't know.
No, yeah, I was gonna say that for those of you who aren't computer science students and don't know how to do this, I think another good way to organize an inbox is just using like labels. After you get sent an email, you can add a label to it, then it like color codes the email. And
Flag
my
it,
company
yeah.
did that, and I thought that that
I
was kind
didn't
of really
even know that
helpful.
was a thing. I just read it or and then I delete it or I just leave it in my inbox as read.
Oh, and make sure, like, if you're getting a calendar invite to some meeting, make sure you like accept it or something.
Oh
People are
yeah, I hate when I send
depending on
out a
that
meeting and people
and they
don't
want to know,
respond.
yeah, they want to know who's attending and they want to know if they need to move it or, and when you send out a thing like that, you want the same etiquette back. So
Mhm.
it's just,
Even if you're an optional attendee, still respond because it's nice to know like who's coming, like if a meeting's starting, should we wait for you or not, things like that.
No, they're not going to wait for an intern unless you're like running that meeting or unless you're playing some vital part. They're not going to wait for you. I mean, still do your best to get there on time and respond to the invite, but nobody's waiting for you.
yeah, but good point, Anna. Yeah, get to that meeting on time. Like, if it's in person, I guess I can't really speak to the difficulties of getting to a meeting on time, but like online, it shouldn't be that difficult. You should be able to show up.
Well, I guess there were a few times when I was in person. I just didn't know the layout of the building. So it would
Sure.
say it's in conference room A. Okay, there I don't know where that is. I don't there's no map, there's no directory. The Google Maps is not
Yeah.
equipped to handle this building.
And I know the company I would have, the company I was at for online, if I was in person, there would have been multiple buildings. I would have had to get in like on a shuttle bus and like gone to
I know
another
some of these
building.
workplaces are like actual campuses and people are like out there on their bikes from building to
Yeah.
building.
So get like a map or something, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know, get there early every day and,
Yes. Yeah,
and
get there
investigate.
early.
Ask your supervisor where these places are. So if it's like 10 minutes before the meeting, you're not scrambling to try to get there.
But also, if you're like a couple minutes late for a meeting in the beginning or even later on, I mean, people show up late to meetings all the time and you're not going to get like chastised or interrogated. Just, I don't know, just try to walk in and
Especially if,
don't be disruptive and just
yeah,
join in.
especially if you have a reason. Like if you had another meeting right before this that was important and you wanted to finish that out and whatever, then, I'm sure people understand. Also, like if Anna's also going to the meeting, ask her to come by your desk and walk with you on the way there and she can show you where it is. So
While we're on the topic of meetings, I think I don't know how I want to say this. I guess there's kind of like different levels of of meetings. Like you'll probably have one-on-one meetings where obviously, like speak and make that really conversational. But there might be some meetings where you're invited and it's just kind of like a sit in. You don't really need to say anything and you're probably not going to have any input just because you're not actively working on the project. You're kind of just there to learn and observe. So that's okay if you're in a meeting and you're just sitting in. You don't have to say something or you don't have to contribute because sometimes you're there just to listen.
oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. Do you think people are like, oh, I better speak up and say something at this really important meeting?
I
Well, and
know
it can be intimidating and kind of like awkward when you're just an intern and you really don't know what's going on and like all these people are way older than you and way more important than you.
Yeah, if you don't know something, don't force something out.
I know at my most recent co-op we had like a team meeting, but it was like the entire like whole department, and we had like someone like the vice presidents, things like that there. And I was the stupid one who thought, oh, I have to ask a question to show that I'm engaged and listening. And that was a mistake. Everyone looked at me like it was the stupidest question in the world. So yeah, I definitely recommend don't do that if you don't have to.
I think the better approach is, well, I guess there's kind of different classifications of meetings, and you'll probably pick that up as you attend different types, but there are some where I guess you're kind of expected to speak and contribute. That'd probably be one-on-ones with another team member or your manager, or even something that happened in both of my co-ops is we had a weekly team meeting where everyone in the team met, kind of gave an update on their project. It was a time to get feedback, ask questions, which is probably something that most teams have, some sort of a weekly team meeting. So that's a place where you can speak up and be a little bit more vocal. But in meetings where it's maybe someone else's project and you're sitting in and listening, you don't have to contribute to show that you're active and engaged. But I think a better alternative is taking some notes or maybe jotting down some stuff to reference later just for your own knowledge, or maybe even if you're scared to speak up or you're maybe not sure if it's the right place, note down some questions and then ask the meeting leader afterwards or send them a follow-up email. I think that's a better way, and maybe like a less intimidating way to show that you are paying attention rather than like asking a question just to chime in.
Asking questions is definitely hard to do, but it's definitely necessary sometimes. Like, you're not always going to have the answers and you're not always going to be able to figure it out on your own. So you can't be afraid to ask questions. You know what I mean? To whether it be about a meeting or even just on your own doing something, don't feel afraid to reach out and ask a question to a coworker, or, you know, if it's in person or an email, or just be like, oh, I don't even know what else, but just don't be afraid.
Yeah, the beginning is all about asking questions. It's an entirely new company, and even in an internship position, you probably never really worked in a corporate environment. It's probably very different than you will have experienced. So even work aside, there's probably questions that you have, just because you've never experienced it. Or honestly, I've been in a lot of situations where it was what they were talking about was like so foreign to me. I didn't even know, like, I couldn't even think of a question to ask because I literally comprehended nothing, or I didn't know what a question to ask was. So yeah, like they won't think you're stupid or anything, and they'll probably enjoy it because it seems like you're interested.
I know my manager for my upcoming co-op, like she's already emailed me being like, "Oh, if you have any questions, ask me now. I will get upset if you don't ask me questions." So if you take anything away, definitely ask questions. I feel like supervisors, like Anna was saying, they like it because it shows interest. And then also make sure that you're doing work correctly, because they would be more upset if you spent like a week, 2 weeks working on a project and it's just completely wrong.
Right, that's a great point. Asking for feedback on a project or even something, some of my managers have even offered to read over an email before I send it out to like 50 people, which I had never even thought about. But that is, if you're nervous about it, or maybe you're not sure you captured the information right, definitely ask, because more than likely they'll be willing to give you feedback, look it over, and that way, I guess you don't embarrass yourself and it probably gets done right the first time. So yeah, I know it's hard to ask questions and you don't want to seem stupid or you don't want to seem incompetent, but um I really don't think anyone will judge you or make fun of you. Everyone's been there, everyone's been new.
I'll say that in the computer science world, there's usually at a company meetings where you can do code reviews and like look over each other's things. And I would definitely recommend going to those. You might be nervous to like show off what you've been working on and ask for feedback, but that's what it has to come to. You don't want to be responsible for messing anything up. So getting people to check over things before it's done is something you should do.
Yeah, and I think your one-on-one time with your manager, supervisor, whoever is a great time to ask for feedback, or even just if you ping someone over Microsoft Teams, like hey, are you available for like 5 minutes to look this over, or can we do a quick call? Like I have a question to ask you. If they're available, they'll probably say yes. I've definitely done that with my manager, and she's done it to me as well if she had something come up that she wanted me to do. So it's I guess better to, if you have a pressing question, deal with it then and there. Don't wait like a week till your next meeting with your manager, or don't wait until you think you found this perfect time. Oh, and I also wanted to add, don't get offended if someone doesn't reply back to you instantaneously. A lot of people have other stuff going on, and sometimes they just don't notice it. Maybe they forget to circle back to it. It's nothing personal.
Well, I was just about to say that that's kind of the beauty of being online. If you are online, that you can send something and they won't have to reply immediately. And don't wait a week in advance. Like you can send it now and it can just sit there. It's not as intimate, I guess, as, being in person. It shouldn't be as nerve wracking for you. You should be able to send an email or a message. It's super easy. And I know at where I was, people had no trouble calling really quickly for that short amount of times. It was so easy to do. So definitely don't be afraid to use those options.
I think the nice thing about in person is you probably get a faster, maybe more direct response, because it's a lot easier to walk over to someone's desk and ask them a question, or walk over to your manager's office and again just ask them. Whereas online, it's maybe a little bit more of a hassle to like send a message, and sometimes it's harder to explain things written instead of like talking it out. And with online, they may not see it right away, or they might think, let me come back to this, and then they might forget. Whereas if you're physically standing there, they're not going to forget or ignore you. But it's probably like not the most favorable thing, especially when you're starting out, but it's still doable.
I think another thing that we should probably talk about is you always hear that you should like be taking an initiative and asking for more work and blah 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 and do as whatever. And I think that's not bad advice. Like you should definitely be working as hard as you can, I guess, but also don't like take on anything that you can't handle. And don't, if you're already busy and your manager says, "Oh, can you do this?" Maybe say no. Like just explain like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not, honestly, I don't know if I can do this." It might be nerve-wracking, but I think being honest and not accepting work that you can't finish is going to be good. But at the same time, if you can handle more, then I don't think it'll hurt you to do that. So,
And even if you ask, they might just not have anything for you. That's happened to me before, where we've been in like kind of a lull or like a lighter workload season, and there just hasn't really been a lot for me to do. And I've asked if there's anything anyone needs help with, and there just isn't. I mean, that's okay too. At least you're showing the initiative. You have no control over what kind of projects they assign or the work they have available, but as long as you show an interest to do a little more, or express that you're capable of more, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for like something to do in terms of like taking initiative, if you have some free time and you want to just kind of do something that makes you stand out, make the experience a little better. I actually got this idea from Evan from his last co-op, but just creating like a new hire guide for like interns, co-ops, whatever. I feel like no matter what department, what field you're in, whatever, a new hire guide is always useful. The future interns will like that. And if you do have the extra time, I think that that is kind of a good way to a get you talking to more people, but you'll probably have to write down resources. Then you'll probably have to contact people for specific information on that. And then also helps you just become kind of more engaged with your own job. It shows that you're taking initiative, and then it'll probably look good to your manager, your supervisor, the team, what have you.
Even in your downtime, which I don't know, I guess again depends on the circumstances. But if it's a full-time 40-hour a week gig, you'll probably have downtime. I mean, you're an intern, they're not going to give you the full workload as an employee. It's just, I don't know. I just, in my experience, that hasn't happened. I have had a lot of free time and downtime. But I think another good way to stay busy is Just reading anything you can get your hands on about the company. A lot of times they have portals with news articles, stuff about maybe they're featuring a product or something like that. Just anything you can read to just, I guess, enhance your knowledge and learn a little bit more. And it's better than sitting there staring at a computer screen.
I don't know about you guys, but I had like a ticket board, of what current projects people were working on and like what was in the backlog and what was, held up because of this reason or what have you. So I think if that's your situation, then you can always look and see what needs to get done. And if you're looking for like, oh, I want to come up with my own project, like look at completed things, like look at what other people have done in the past, look at what they've done, look at, you know, like specific like their code and things like that, just from my perspective. Um, so there's always things to look at. And also, we were talking about this earlier, going to meetings and just sitting in. And I think you can definitely find tons of meetings to in on if you're interested. So definitely reach out and be like, oh, I heard that you were in this meeting. Can I join? Things like that.
Also, a lot of bigger companies, at least, I'm not so sure about smaller ones, but the ones I've worked for, a lot of times the company has like weekly events almost. I guess events, some of them, they had like a bunch of lunch and learns where you can go and eat your lunch and someone will give a presentation about something the company's working on or some research that they're doing, where there were a lot of, I don't know, even stuff like health and wellness fairs where they'd have guest speakers, or like cybersecurity week, or like compliance and ethics weeks, just a lot of events. So I guess if you're bored, go to those. I've gone to plenty of those because I've had nothing to do. And sometimes they have food. So a lot of them had food actually.
Anna's here for the free food.
I know, and
Feed
I'm
your
not doing
mind
anything
and your
else.
stomach.
Yeah, I have definitely in my emails been there's so many invitations to random training for this and this and this, and it doesn't really apply to what that ever I'm doing, but it would give me something to do sometimes to just go and learn about this other thing that existed.
Yeah, especially if you're there 40 hours a week. As an intern, you're not going to be busy 40 out of the 40 hours a week.
I mean, maybe you are, and good for you, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I think
maybe,
Anna's right. I think
but
most of us probably won't
yeah.
be.
And it's just a situation where I guess if you think about it on the company's end, you're an intern, you're a student, you're still learning. They're not going to put all this on you. It's probably a liability to them.
Hmm.
But
It wouldn't be a very good company if they expected you to know everything like that, I guess. So,
right. And I think more often than not, the company and your managers and your team are understanding of the fact that you're still young. It's probably your first work experience. You still are in school. You don't know everything.
yeah. And another thing I think you can take away from your internship is, uh, making those connections and jotting down some emails that you could follow up with and catch up in like a month and, just stay connected and use as a reference in the future, things like that.
Yes. So on the topic of networking, I have a lot to say about this. But when I think of networking, I guess I think of like when you're in your internship, you want to maximize the time you're there, however long it is. You want to meet as many people you can, learn as much as you can, and make connections. I know in both of my co-ops, my managers have asked me, are there any groups that you're interested in that you would want to talk with to learn more about? Or is there any person in particular or any role that you want to learn more about? So definitely take advantage of those opportunities to talk to different people, see what they do. For your sake, maybe you don't. I mean, I kind of don't really know what I want to do. So I think those are helpful. And even if you do know what you want to do, a lot of times there's a lot of
Yeah.
cross-functional
Hmm.
work. So it is helpful to maybe understand what another role does and see how that fits in to to the work you do, because a
Mhm.
lot of stuff, like one group hinges off another one.
It's nice to just be sure that this is what you want to do and seeing what
Right.
other
And
people
it's good
do
to
day
hear
to day.
different perspectives and different experiences. And it's, I guess, at the end of the day, a connection that you made. Add them on LinkedIn, get their email. I don't know, it could come in handy someday.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we want to do a rapid fire?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And maybe not just even for like this episode, but I
I
guess
was gonna say, yeah,
if
of
rapid fire
everything.
for our entire series, just internships as a whole, from applying
Oh,
to
I was going to
working
say
at the
like a
job.
rapid fire on this topic, but if you guys just want to go back to all three of them, that's fine.
Why not? Let's just close out the series with a
Yeah, that's what
bang.
I was thinking. Yeah. We kind of talked about this in the interview, but this isn't, hopefully, this already, but like just come dressed appropriately to work. I'm sure that'll depend on your work, but again, you can never go wrong with overdressing the first day, and then you can see what everyone else is doing and maybe ask and be like, oh, is it okay? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, yeah. So just being sure and not assuming anything, just come prepared.
Okay, so this tip, I guess, is probably going to be circumstantial and it might not apply to everyone. But the internships I've had have all been around the holiday season, and I've gotten invited to the corporate parties and luncheons and stuff. So if that applies to you, take advantage of it. The annual holiday party doesn't cost money to attend. You get a nice meal. I even won like a raffle prize at one of them. And hey, when you're in college and you're young, a free meal at like a banquet hall, sure, sign me up.
I would say that like your first day, first week, if your manager or supervisor is just like giving you general like procedural instructions on like things that you're going to have to be doing probably for a long duration of the internship co-op, what have you, I definitely recommend writing that down because as a manager or supervisor, I would be kind of annoyed if I had to keep repeating myself, especially this early. And I think it just kind of sets you off on a bad start. So I definitely recommend just writing instructions down in the beginning, even if you think you might forget them. I'd still say write it down just so you remember and you have that to rely on if you don't know what to do.
I don't know what you guys think about this, but I mean, I don't know. I kind of think like if the place you work at has like a gym or any other sort of like benefits, I guess you could call it, I guess take advantage of that if that's what you want to do. I mean, I
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't work out, so I don't have a use for a gym, but maybe if I did work out, I would. I mean, I know people who went like on their lunch breaks to, I don't know, go for a run, get the endorphins in before the afternoon.
I feel like you'll know when applying to the job their amenities and if that's something that you're
They're not
interested
gonna
in.
tell you that, yeah, we have a gym, we have an in-house
What? I feel
Starbucks,
like
we
I,
have a
I don't know about
cafeteria.
I don't know about your job descriptions, but they're like, this is a great company to work at. We got this.
It seems like
They're
the
like
That
really
computer
was
trying to
science
never
emphasize.
industry is
stated.
very different than every
Yeah, this
other
isn't
industry.
like
Well, I don't know what to tell
we're
you.
not getting jobs at Google where they're advertising like their sleeping pods and their free cereal bars and stuff and their hammocks.
I'm lucky to get a single cubicle.
I wish I got a cubicle. Anyway, I was gonna say I don't know if this is good advice. Not to call Anna out, but I know she sat with her fellow co-opers
That's
at the
such a
time
good
during
point. Why
lunch.
would that be calling me out?
Well, I'm
That's
just
like a good thing.
oh well, I was gonna say like first of all, don't sit by yourself. You should find someone else you can sit with. But I was thinking like, oh, maybe Anna shouldn't have sat with her co-opers. Maybe she should have sat with like her team and like socialized and used that
No one in
as
my
a
team came down
bonding.
for lunch.
Okay, well, then
Yeah,
forget
but
them.
that's a very good point that I totally forgot to talk about. My first co-op honestly was kind of a lot of fun because there were several other co-ops and we carpooled there together and we ate lunch together, and sometimes we went out to dinner after work or like on our lunch break we booked it to the Dairy Queen for a midday blizzard and then raced back. But if there's other interns, definitely connect with them. I think you'll have way more fun, and it's, I guess, a shoulder to like cry on if you need. They know what you're going through.
And not just for fun, but even for like, I know Anna used it for a carpool to get there. Things like that too. You might not even think about how you're going to get to work every day. So you might need to find other ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to clarify on the carpool, that might, I mean, at our school, everyone does a co-op, and we were all on the same college campus, so it made commuting really easy. I mean, if you're in more of like a traditional situation, I don't know if like, unless you want to go to everyone's house
Well,
individually to pick them
I'm
up.
just thinking like maybe you could meet at a nearby school and get in one car and then drive the hour from there. I'm sure it all depends, but just socializing like that and knowing the other people and having those options maybe would be helpful.
Yeah, the company that I'm gonna be co-oping at, they actually have a LinkedIn group for all like the new co-ops, interns, everything like that. And there are people in the group being like, "Hey, I live in this part of the country. I live here. Would you guys want to meet up at this location and then carpool to work together?" And there are people who are like, "Yeah, let's do that." So like definitely take advantage of like those resources if your company provides that.
I want to give a quick work from home tip. Um, what?
Nothing. Keep going.
Okay. Um, I think working from home is nice and I've enjoyed it, but if that's your position, especially as a new employee, you're going to have to take the initiative and be a self-starter even more if you were there. Like in that regard, it's a lot harder because there's no one. I guess in the office, you kind of feel maybe like a pressure to do stuff or to look busy or to not put something off. But when you're at home, there's really not as much accountability as in the office. So it's definitely harder in that regard, and you do have to stay motivated and be on top of things.
I know in the beginning for my online, I really pushed myself to put on an outfit, even though I wasn't turning on my camera
Oh, good
half
for
the
you.
time. And part of me is like, maybe that's good advice. And maybe that like helped me in the beginning to be a little more, uh, participate a little more. But at the same time, I definitely let that go and I have no regrets about that. So just, I think, be aware of that. And maybe if that's what you need to do for a little bit, then you can do that. I think it helped me a little bit.
But I also want to say if you stay in your pajamas, that's perfectly fine. Just put on a nice-ish looking shirt if you have a meeting. But a
Yeah,
lot of times meetings are just voice only, so you might be able to get away with I don't know, no like being naked. I don't
well,
even
yeah,
know.
and I know. Well, I'll say a perk about where I interned was we didn't I didn't just have, meetings with the people in my group. Sometimes they would also set up meetings with some higher ups in the company. And that was always nice to sit in and talk to them about their opinions and whatnot with some other interns. So I would also have to throw on a button down real quick and turn on my camera. So yeah, definitely be dressed.
Question for you guys, since you both have like done remote co-ops internships, and honestly like shirts for the podcast, this is also just for me too since I'm starting a remote co-op in a couple weeks. But like let's say it's your first week or so and you have meetings with like your team, your manager, all of them are wearing more casual clothes because they're at home. Should you or should I still wear like a button down and nice shirt as if I was in person, or should I just kind of forgo that and just wear casual things?
I mean, honestly, most of the video calls I've been in, no one's really
Same.
that formal.
Hmm.
And I've
Half the
definitely
time the
worn
camera isn't
like
on.
a hoodie or a t-shirt in a meeting and no one has really cared. Other people are doing it too. I mean, I really doubt somebody would call you
Call you
out
out.
for it. I mean, maybe if you're giving a presentation or it's some sort of event where you feel like maybe you would need to look a little better,
Okay,
I
so
really wouldn't stress
here,
it.
yeah, here's what I would say. We've kind of answered this with in person. I would say don't be, maybe dress up a little bit in the beginning. It shouldn't be too hard to put a button up over whatever t-shirt you're wearing, you know what I mean? So if that's
Over
if
a t-shirt.
yeah, if it's a 30-minute call, don't take off the t-shirt and put on a button down. Just put the button on.
Well, I'm just
over the
concerned
t-shirt.
fit-wise. That seems a little uncomfortable.
And also, it might look a little boxy if you're wearing a shirt underneath.
How tight is your button?
I don't know. I'm not a men's fashion expert.
Well, if your button up is that tight, then clearly.
Well, I feel like you wear clothes that are too big for you, that don't really fit you in the first place.
Maybe, but I don't think your button up should. I don't think a t-shirt under your button up should be that.
How form-fitting of a t-shirt is this?
Well, how form-fitting of a button-up? Like, aren't you supposed to wear an undershirt anyway with buttons?
I think you're supposed to, but I never do. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't.
Yeah, but regardless, they're made for that, I think. So get off my chain.
I think that this is the conversation for another episode. Maybe
we'll do one. You're the one
that
got
me a men's fashion and style guide episode.
I was going to say, just dress up, but we talked about this earlier. Just ask your manager. It might be a little awkward, but just say like, hey, is it okay if I just wear a t-shirt? Like, I see everyone else wearing a t-shirt. I just want to set the record straight and know for sure.
We hope you found this information helpful, and we wish you the best of luck with your internship search and experience. So this concludes our internship series. Definitely check out our last 2 episodes if you haven't checked those out, and let us know if you want us to do any more series in the future.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
Be sure to like and follow our podcast on whatever platform you're currently listening to it on.
Check out our social media, linked in the description, and tune in next week for even more advice.
TTYL
from IFL.
Bye!